Hey, what's up guys, this is Kerr, and welcome to video number 3 of Sculpting the Indominus Rex. If you've already watched the first two parts, I really appreciate it. If you haven't checked them out yet, you should go check those out before watching this one. In this video, I go ahead and create the arms and a few facial details. So here we go. Alright, so we're going to start this off by just carving in some area on right at the base of the neck where I want to attach the arms. I'm just kind of prepping the geometry. This isn't something I'm, laying in stone right off the bat, because that's just for general placement of getting the arm started. As you can see, I'm using a ZSphere base to draw out the base topology for the arm and the fingers. And this is just a process you kind of have to take your time with. It's not something that's overly quick. But it is quicker than creating a base mesh in Maya. And there's that distinctive opposable thumb that the Indominus had. This is the type of thing ZSpheres are great for, because you can just lay in the form fairly quickly. Even though you do have to take your time, it does feel quicker. And carving out more clay to really get a solid sense of how the arm should be set. I'm just kind of playing around with the orientation of the arm. Now going through and adding some volume to it, because you can only ask so much of ZSpheres. It's not like the magic elixir that will, give you the structure right off the bat. You do have to go through, of course, and refine. And this is really fun because you just get to play and just start slapping clay onto the structure. It takes me a while to really get the form correct, so you'll see me put clay on, take it away, put it back on, and repeat. Playing around with the placement of each of the fingers. I'm adding in those muscly pads on the palm. Going through and adding some clay to resemble somewhat of a muscle structure. It's nowhere near a final form, but it does just help me start to understand how much volume should be put onto the surface. And going through and adding that slight webbing between the fingers there. The thumb was a little bit too big, so I had to shrink it down a little bit. I wanted these fingers to look kind of tendony, so that's what I'm going for with that, adding a few strokes to really get that look in there. And now I'm using the masking feature to pull out the nails, or claws, however you want to call them. Again, same type of feature I used for the teeth and the scoops on his back. The Indominus had some freakishly long claws, so I'm trying to really make sure I get that in there. And I skip ahead because it's the same process for all the fingers. And I just duplicate the arm over to the other side using duplicate and mirror. And now I've Dynameshed the arms and the body together. The shape's really starting to come together at this point. And adding in some muscle volume. At this point, the Indominus looks like it's been spending some time at the gym. I will be fixing some of that a little bit later. I'm hiding a few of the shapes here so I can really focus in on just specific areas without having anything else visually distracting me. Because now that I've Dynameshed the top of the head and the body together, I can go back through and refine the shapes. And I'm using a mask so I can isolate specific areas I want to pull out for scale detail. And I'm going to use this same approach for adding detail over the whole body. It's time consuming, but the result is much nicer than using any sort of alphas. Here, pulling out the bony protrusions coming from the snout. Another distinctive feature of the Indominus. Once again, just using the mask and the move tool, not the brush, the actual move tool, or rotate tool, I should say, to pull out those forms. Those forms will be revisited once I remesh it, because some of that detail will likely be lost in the remeshing process. But this is just helping me see the shape start to come together. I'm not going to add all the tinier scales because that detail is hard to keep after remeshing a Dynamesh, so I'll just save that type of work for later. Adding some volume to the head ornaments using the clay buildup brush. Even at this point, most of the tools I'm using are move and clay buildup. Once I start adding scales and everything, I'll likely switch over to something like the FormSoft brush, because it does help make the details come up a little bit nicer. It doesn't come across as quite as jagged as something like the clay buildup. So mask and clay buildup for a few more of the scales that run along the nasal cavity there. Going back and forth between sculpting and looking at my reference. And now I'm adding in those quill type pieces that come off the top of the Indominus's head and neck. Actually, just the top of his head. There's nothing on the bottom of the neck. If you remember in Jurassic Park 3, the raptors had those type of quills. That might have been the inspiration for giving the Indominus quills, since it is part raptor. Even though the raptors in Jurassic World didn't have these, you know, still could be considered inspiration, I suppose. And I'm going through and just kind of adding some variation to the way they're placed on the head, because I don't want them to look too uniform. That came out pretty well. And that pretty much wraps things up for this segment. I hope you enjoyed part 3, guys. So stay tuned for part 4. I will remesh the whole model, add scales and other things, and if the video doesn't run too long, even add a few other things as well.